Hi, this is Dr. Randy Bach. Today is July 27, 2022, and I'm here with the Coronavirus Conversation. This is a weekly video cast we do on coronavirus. Um, Even though coronavirus is somewhat gone, CNN just the other day, I think July 14th, said this is the worst variant ever. CNN might be the worst variant ever. People who buy into this might be the worst variant ever. I hate to use epithets, but worst variant in what regard? Omicron is frankly the best variant ever. It's transmissible. It gives people immunity. It has nothing to do with the vaccine, so people are just getting it and they can move on with their lives. There's very little in the way of morbidity and so forth that happens with it. Um, it's a weird thing. You have to wonder who pays the writers and what they're getting out of this. It's so strange. I'm going to try to go over the world of coronavirus and our world in general as briefly as I can, maybe in the next 25, 30 minutes. So stick around. I'm going to get right to the slides. Let's see, I have some slides prepared for you, and let's see if I can get them up here in due course. So our president, Joe Biden, um, he he came down with COVID. Uh, I think he's had it before. He's been vaccinated. He wears a mask all the time, and he got it. And you figure if this is a really worst variant ever, here's somebody who's in, say not the best of health, at least mentally. Physically, he seems to be deteriorating quite a bit. Go check out a video from when he was vice running, in 2008, for instance. In the debate against Paul, 2012 debate against Paul Ryan, he seems like a really viable, voluble, argumentative kind of guy. He's still argumentative, but he somewhat has lost his faculties, like some of our more, I guess when a college lays people off, he's lost his faculties as well. Anyway, but nonetheless, this is such a big bad variant strain that it has been unable to knock down the president. Despite perhaps a certain amount of palace intrigue, wanting him to do the 25th Amendment route and let his possible heir apparent or heiress apparent Kamala Harris take over. No, he's improving. So these are the headlines. Uh, he's feeling great. He's getting back to work, and I assume this mask photo is from some other time. The masks didn't seem to have done him very much good. He stayed in his basement for the 2020 election. He comes out. I think he has a 2-day work week. Um, I'm sure he doesn't have that many interactions and very few personal dates, and yet he got COVID somehow anyway. So the thing is communicable, and the masks seem to be somewhat irrelevant. This guy's wearing a mask all the time, and people are screened before they go near him. He got it anyway. So what's up with that? Nonetheless, he recommends that you get vaccinated. um, it's it's just kind of a funny thing. Um, and what else do we have on this? Well, let's see. Um, that's kind of it for him, I guess. But he somewhat factors into this next story. Um, we've seen COVID play out in a really silly scale for sports. We remember the Kyrie Irving controversy with the basketball. Sort of somewhat wrecked their super team. James Harden left, and Kevin Durant wants to leave now, and their season was in shambles. They didn't get good placement. And Kyrie, I admire him. He stood up for principle. There's no reason for him to be vaccinated. He has natural immunity against COVID. These rules are absurd. He knows his body, and if he doesn't want to take the risk of getting myocarditis, there's no reason for him to, because he has better immunity from natural immunity, and he's not getting sick again. The Blue Jays, by virtue of playing in America's hat, aka Canada, sorry Canada, they won't let non-vaccinated players come in. They could easily make a dispensation because these are not immigrants. These are, traveling baseball players. They're all in perfect health. Obviously, they are supreme athletes. They take care of themselves. They're not ill, and they're not going to get anybody else sick. They don't consort with the locals. And mind you, Omicron is as above is not that bad a version to get. CF, the president. I mean, he's got it, and he's, seems to be fine. He's 80, nearing 80 years old. So some Canadian, it's Canadian because they spell the word favor, O-U-R in the British way. Vaccination rules not tipping the scales in Blue Jays' favor. Well, of course it is, because all the Americans, if the Blue Jays somehow make it, and they have a good team, if they make it to the World Series, if they play the Cardinals, Paul Goldschmidt, who's the putative for prospective MVP of the National League, is not going to be able to play. He is standing on principle. He knows his body as well. Same with Kyrie, and he doesn't, doesn't see any reason. He doesn't have any reason to get the vaccination. And clearly the vaccination has not even protected our president, who's, I'm sure, triply or quadruply vaccinated and quarantined all the time. He got it anyway. So it seems somewhat of an irrelevancy at this point. It's an outdated, antiquated vaccine that's no longer appropriate, and was never appropriate for healthy age groups anyway. I mean, you can take it, nothing wrong with it, but it shouldn't have been mandatory. Let me phrase it that way. Certainly, there's very little reason for children ever to have gotten it, aside from kind of getting along socially and or dealing with rules and whatnot. But they don't really get sick. So the chickenpox party concept has always been around there. If you didn't have a vaccine, and if the illness doesn't get you that sick, you have the chickenpox party, you get the illness naturally, and you get it over with. Same with German measles at the time. So this gets to the second point. We are conversely, we don't want to necessarily set ourselves any better than the Canadian government. We're not allowing Novak Djokovic, the coincidentally named Novak, as in Novaks, Djokovic. Australia, I think, let him in. Then they didn't let him in for the Australian Open. The U.S. Open's coming up. We are apparently denying entry to unvaccinated non-citizens. And the USTA, they shouldn't necessarily take the hit because they're following United States policy in this regard. Read the policy, and there are exceptions for unvaccinated non-citizens. A pro tennis player would not seem to fit those categories, but on the other hand, they could make a dispensation for Djokovic to come in and play his games and leave. He just won Wimbledon, I believe, so he's top of the world, one of the great tennis players, and it's a disservice to the people who are paying the U.S. Open not to see him play. They're going to be far enough away, they're not going to worry about it. And again, it's an irrelevancy because Omicron at this stage of the game is not much of an illness. We're going to get to that in a minute, but this is a federal registry. This is the Federal Register. I think this is from the executive branch, and they have reasons that we're not going to let the entry of unvaccinated non-citizen immigrants, except in limited circumstances. Well, all well and good, but can anybody here think of a kind of an unlimited circumstance in which we are letting in unvaccinated non-citizen I guess immigrants? I don't know if they're non-immigrants or not, but we have open border. We have people flowing in by the millions across our southern border. None of them are being COVID tested or vaccine, given affidavits or tested in any way. It's a craziness that we're letting people come here to live and stay. And if that's a policy, well, all well and good, then we should certainly let a top, healthy tennis player come in. And it just makes no sense. So this is all written in black and white, but it doesn't make any sense in the general context of having ostensibly an open border. This is, I think, from the Financial Times. Oh, this is actually quoting me. I was writing a note to somebody regarding one of my organizations. This gentleman wants everyone to put a mask back on. He is a voice of authority. He's got an MD, I believe, an MPH, and he works within the public health apparatus. And he wants everyone to remask July 2022 in closed indoors. And this is craziness. I quoted the DanMask study from 2020, fall of 2020 in Denmark, and their results, they did possibly the only large-scale mask study, and you can barely find it on Google, by the way. If you search the terms, everyone calls it misinformation, and it won't come up on the Google search unless it, of course, is being refuted. But in general course of things, they didn't really see that masking did that much in changing communication of the virus. That certainly makes sense because the virus is tiny, it's floating around the air, and you're going to be breathing one way or another, and a lot of times from the sides of the masks regardless. if you ever see that, somebody smoking a cigarette, putting a mask on, all the air is filtering on one way or another. Even as it goes through it, it's not going to catch every virion or aerosol particle. This is an older slide from March of 2022, and the communication of Omicron went down when the mask mandates were removed. I think I don't think it's cause and effect. I just think it's an irrelevancy. I think masks do very little as far as respiratory viruses are concerned. COVID is, this is from the Financial Times, January 2022, and they're quoting certain other studies. Basically, that what you should be concerned about, the case fatality rate is, now around influenza, seasonal flu, and I think that's with vaccines for flu. So it's not even against severe, naive, unvaccinated influenza. And so, mind you, they use some of the wrong terminology. They use boosters here when these really aren't boosters. They are old vaccines for COVID-19 when it's COVID-22 right now. So this is a mislabel or misnomer. And of course, they didn't really do anything. The boosters didn't change the case fatality rate. They don't do anything. So this is orders of magnitude, or is an order of magnitude from 1% to 0.1%. So that's going from 20 times the influenza down to 2 times down to probably half again as much. So it's probably a 20-fold drop of danger from the variant strains, and the current Omicron is probably even lower still. When we were first exposed to COVID, it was almost 20 times lethal as the flu, and of course now it's not, as I said above. This is England. I like looking at English data. I think our data, unfortunately, is somewhat polluted by the fact that we are over diagnosing COVID in our hospitals. We test everybody, and we are getting a lot of data of people dying from, I don't know, kidney cancer or whatever, and we're labeling this COVID because we test everybody all the time, and then we wind up having special monies, earmarked for hospitals and/or, for giving patients deductibles, so they're in it together in a sense, hospitals and patients, in overdiagnosing COVID and attaching that diagnosis and getting financial benefit. So the English data and their population cohort is not vastly different from ours, ethnically or by age and so forth. So I prefer looking at a lot of the English data. And here it states that more than, let's see if I can get back here. More than 2/5 of COVID-19 patients in England's hospitals are being treated primarily for something else, having incidentally tested positive upon admission. So this is the same thing that goes on in the United States, except we have it worse. I think that's shaded our numbers upwards when overall there's not really been that much change in overall mortality, aside from kind of the spring of 2020. We haven't had a gross increase in mortality. People do die. Hate to tell you, about 10,000, 8 to 10,000 people who die in the United States every year, and I think only about 9% of them are respiratory related, pneumonia, influenza, COVID, and that number is not necessarily changing as a percentage that very much, and the overall number is not really changing. So this is a quote from the public health letter that I got from a friend, and it's somewhat an admission against interest, pointing out that the White House is going to, talk about a second generation vaccine. Well, so what does that say about the current generation vaccine? It says what I've been saying all along, which is it's outdated. Finally, people are admitting that here are the 2 points here, that it doesn't adequately cover the broad array of variants around, and it doesn't prevent viral infection or transmission. Well, I'm sorry, how do I put this? Duh. That's kind of what we've been saying all along. This should serve as a clear indication that limiting spread, irrespective of individual level of risk, remains a priority. Well, I don't necessarily come to that conclusion because, again, the virion, the virus, is not that bad. I think that, I'll come to this in a second. I think that maybe my slides are a little bit out of order here. But basically, transmissibility is almost the opposite of danger. If something's very transmissible as a respiratory virus, it's not necessarily killing a lot of people, because if it did, you wouldn't be able to transmit it. If you get a huge bad flu, you're going to be knocked up and laid up in bed. You're not going to be getting around, passing it around. You're going to be like Joe Biden in his basement. If you have something that's pretty mild, you can continue on your job, you go to work, and you give it to a lot of people. So transmissibility and danger are almost inversely proportional. Um, I'm gonna follow the slides here and go in a slightly different direction. There's an article here. Does ivermectin have a place in treating mild COVID-19? This is from May 2022 out of Israel, and they have really good data analysis, and for better or worse, they kind of track people heavily. I don't agree with everything Israel's done during the pandemic, but they do have that. Um, uh, and again, apologize for the out of order here, but um, the worst, this is the CNN I was mentioning. The worst variant is here. This is July 14. Coronavirus, fact versus fiction. Fact versus fiction. I'm going to say it like CNN. Um, this is embarrassing. I mean, I would be hugely embarrassed today to be Eliza McIntosh and have this attributed to my name. And I'd be hugely embarrassed for CNN to have this as the worst variant. Worst in what regard? I have no idea. We're going to go look at some of the data. This, of course, filters through to other news sources. So CNN, they don't necessarily have to stand alone in infamy or ignominy. The Los Angeles Times, super contagious and able to reinfect. California faces big coronavirus risk from BA1. Excuse me, BA.4, for the third straight year, the arrival of summer has brought fresh uncertainties about the COVID-19 outlook in California. Again, this is a mistake. It's not COVID-19. It's COVID-22. So the words I would get rid of are booster and COVID-19. You can keep COVID-19, but have it refer to COVID-19 in year 2020. COVID-21, COVID-20, COVID-22, they're all different things. And have made this huge mistake of having them grouped in as if COVID-19 is a booster, and we have treated getting sick with COVID-19. Biden, I saw the headlines, the Chiron the other day said sick with COVID-19. No, he's sick with COVID-22. This is something I wrote. You can maybe pause this and look at some of the numbers here. These are some points I wrote in the letter of communication. Masks themselves have very minimal effect. They've never been shown or proven conclusively in limiting the spread of the illness. Children should have chickenpox parties, should have had, with COVID. The things we've done, the reactions to the virus are far worse than the virus. We've kept people out of school. We've ruined the economy. Our elites have done kind of just hunky-dory working at home in the meanwhile. And this might explain some of their, what I call lack of cross-demographic empathy, which means they don't really understand all the damage they've done to the poor people. They think they're helping the world. They're not. And they're somewhat insulated because their jobs have gotten better, frankly. I mean, most everybody I know, and I hang out with, the elites, essentially, doctors and lawyers and professors and business guys and whatnot. They're able to, work, I don't know, through the pandemic at home. Even now, most everybody, a lot of people I know are only on a part-time going to work schedule. So their lives have gotten better as far as commuting. I don't think they have the collegiality and conviviality they used to. Anyway, so I'm sorry about that. And so the other points for all but the elderly and severely comorbid, coronavirus presents a threat similar to influenza, as I've said. Natural immunity is more powerful than vaccine immunity, and so forth. So, this is let's see. Right, there we go. I'm sorry about that. So my slides are acting up on me. I apologize. That might be the end of my slideshow. Let's see. Yeah, so that's the end of the slideshow. Let me just see if I can kind of go on and move on to some other items that might be of interest to us, to you. My computer is acting a little bit slow. All right, well, I don't want to bore you with this. I'm kind of already went through the slides. What else do I have to add from this? You know, the basically, I, I would like to use that Men in Black tool and zap everybody, and get to the point where people don't test for COVID, because it's kind of a meaningless thing. It's like testing for the common cold at this point. Maybe mild flu. People's lives should go on. We had people. I had my birthday recently. We had a party, and at least a couple of guests didn't show up because they didn't want to be exposed to COVID. Silly. It's not doing that much, and some of them are treating for elderly and whatnot. But as we've seen with our president, it doesn't seem to knock them over. I no doubt he had some benefit from therapeutics, and I guess that was one last point I wanted to get to. Let's see if I can. Wow, the computer is acting really slow. Let me see if I can just add this to the stream, and I'll try to get to it. All right. Well, we'll do what we can. I guess the therapeutic point I wanted to get to is this. So Deborah Birx, whom I call Scarf Ace, she always wore a scarf. Now they're talking about therapeutics. Let's talk about therapeutics for a minute. Paxlovid. This is, I believe, from Pfizer. It's really interesting. Blah blah blah. And are we becoming Paxlovid over reliant? Well, first of all, Dr. Birx has a book out, and in a sense, it's almost prosecutable, because she admits that they lied to the American public from the beginning about the efficacy of vaccines from the White House, and they didn't ever think it was going to stop transmissibility or slow things down very much. But they said it anyway. You can read her book, and I'm sure I can find the quote and so forth. But now she's on board with therapeutics. They spent a lot of time, downplaying the possibility of therapeutics working in 2020. This is the pre-vaccine era. Studies now are showing that there is a place for the dread, what is it called, horse dewormer, ivermectin. It was insulted in that way. I'm not going to go over this in detail because it's kind of obtuse, but they basically showed in this study here out of Israel, ivermectin has been used in a lot of countries around the world, and with very little downside and some possible benefit. It's hard, things weren't done in a planned way, the way studies are organized, so it was very haphazard. But overall, when they looked at this meta-analysis, they found that there was a reduction in hospitalization risk. It's somewhat on a par with the Paxlovid, and I could probably show that separately. But where is it? Yeah, here we go. Paxlovid compare with ivermectin. This guy here, Josh Bloom, thinks it's from December 2021. He thinks that Paxlovid is superior, and ivermectin is junk. But the actual data don't show that much difference between ivermectin and how do we say it? The other one here. There's nirmatrelvir, and there's another one that starts with an M. I can't remember all these names. I apologize. That are similar to Paxlovid, and there you have it. So, ivermectin is inexpensive. It's off patent. It doesn't benefit. Oh, here it is. Here's the. I'll expand this a little bit. Molnupiravir. How do we do it? Molnupiravir. It's a new word to learn. So this resembles, it's similar to Paxlovid. I think Molnupiravir is off market currently, and Paxlovid is the new one replacing. But these act similarly, and ivermectin had the hospitalization diminishment of similar level in these randomized non-controlled studies. These are meta-analyses. So they have some defects in their study analysis, but there's no reason, certainly in the absence of any other way of dealing with the virus in 2020 to have used. There's no reason not to have used ivermectin then, and places that did don't seem to have had any deleterious effects. It was used all throughout the third world, and there were no great gross problems. Frankly, I was going to show you a slide from Tanzania they've had almost zero COVID-related deaths. Are they not testing? Are people not getting sick? Are they more outdoors? Are they younger? It's hard to say. But a good swath of the world is coronavirus is not a problem, not an issue. Not people aren't masking up and they're not caring about this in great way because they've got other problems. Their problems are subsistence, getting food, getting by, and getting on. So I'm going to do the same. I'm going to wish you well and call it a day for today. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I'm sorry for some of the poor production quality and some of the slides perhaps not having been ordered adequately. But if you have any questions or comments, please let me know and I'll try to address them as soon as I can. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Tune in. Oh, and here's my plug for my book. I have the book out, Overturning Zika. It's about the last pandemic. You can get it on Amazon. I have a Portuguese version coming out. I'm going to try to do a push in Brazil where they maybe care about this a little bit more. And I actually have a comic book coming out as well. If you'd like to see that or get on the list as early publication, I'd love to get some of your thoughts and reviews. And if you buy the book on Amazon, please leave a review, and even better if it's positive. So thank you. Have